Hello, everyone. Due to personal matters, I was unable to conduct a live stream yesterday. Today, however, extraordinarily significant news has emerged. The truth behind the fourth plenary session remains far from fully uncovered. Were the true charges against Weidong and Miao Hua in their major case? Why was Zhang Xingmin promoted to vice chairman of the Central Military Commission but not included in the Politburo? Has Xi Jinping's grip on military power truly become more secure? Are the notions of an anti-Xi faction and the Xi-Zhang rivalry entirely fabricated? This weekend, Ms. Cai Xia, a second-generation red elite with a military compound background now residing overseas, exclusively revealed shocking details about Weidong and Miao Hua secretly forming a private army with the intent to carry out covert military operations. Coincidentally, Yao Cheng, a former Chinese Navy lieutenant colonel and staff officer, disclosed similar information almost simultaneously. Additionally, the two-day U.S.-China trade negotiations in Malaysia concluded today. As I discussed with you the day before yesterday, the Chinese Communist Party's CCP communiques can be fabricated, but their policies cannot. These negotiations serve as a critical indicator of the prevailing winds. So what were the outcomes of these talks? Today is October 26th, Eastern Time, and I am Tang Jinyuan. Welcome to subscribe to our channel as we uncover the truth behind the news together. Let us first address Ms. Cai Xia's revelations. On October 25th, Cai Xia, a former professor at the Central Party School, revealed on the self-media program Fong Fei Time that Miao Hua and Weidong secretly established an armed force in the Langfang region, completely independent from any existing theater commands, military regions, or the conventional military system. This unit, nominally at the deputy division level, is equipped and resourced at a deputy army level, embodying a classic model of low rank with high allocation. Moreover, the command structure of this force is highly unusual, as it does not report to any theater command or military branch and answers solely to Miao Hua and Weidong, accepting no oversight or interference from other military institutions. Cai Xia emphasized that she had learned of this information through multiple channels within the system earlier, but, out of caution, had never disclosed it publicly. Following the incidents involving he and Miao, the officers at various levels of this force are now under investigation. Professor Cai stressed that, coming from a military background herself, she maintains connections with many second-generation red elites from the military. She had long been aware of this information through multiple channels within the system, but refrained from public disclosure due to caution. With the conclusion of the fourth plenary session and the intense controversy surrounding the Weidong and Miao Hua case, she decided to share the details she had obtained. Cai Xia's observations are as follows. Her sources did not explicitly reveal the purpose of this force's establishment or whether it had already undertaken any missions. However, Cai believes its purpose is evident. It was a private armed force tailored specifically for Xi Jinping by Miao Hua and Weidong, effectively Xi's private army. Its base in Langfang, close to Beijing, was chosen for its proximity, enabling rapid mobilization to provide immediate protection and support for Xi Jinping in critical moments. Weidong and others could not and would not dare admit that this force was established under Xi Jinping's directive, which is closely tied to the two violations charges against he and Miao. She argues that this indicates military power is not in Xi's hands but under Zhang's control. Otherwise, she would not have gone to such lengths to secretly establish a private army. These are the details provided by Ms. Cai, along with some of her own perspectives. Coincidentally, former Navy Lieutenant Colonel Yao Cheng made similar revelations, alleging that Weidong, Miao Hua, and others were involved in an armed rebellion. In his program on October 23rd, he disclosed the following. During the two sessions in March this year, 9 senior generals, led by Weidong and Miao Hua, conspired to oust Zhang Xia, involving the Eastern Theater Command, the People's Armed Police, and the Marine Corps. This led to the Ministry of National Defense's announcement on October 17th that 9 senior generals, including he and Miao, were under investigation and expelled from the party and military, though Wang Xiaobin retained his party membership. Yao Qing emphasized that this case goes far beyond corruption and constitutes political rebellion. He specifically mentioned Wang Xiaobin, his fellow townsman and colleague, noting that Wang was initially thought to be free of corruption issues. However, investigations revealed Wang's involvement in the conspiracy, and he is currently detained at the General Political Department's detention center in Beijing's Leigangying, with the case classified as a confidential criminal matter, barring lawyer involvement. The Ministry of National Defense's accusation that the 9 generals severely undermined the party's command over the military and the system of the chairman of the Central Military Commission points to a grave political issue of armed rebellion. The revelation indicates that the conspiracy began after Miao Hua's arrest in November 2024, with his former subordinates coordinating during the 2 sessions. Key figures include Lin Xiangyang, commander of the Eastern Theater Command, where many of Miao Hua's former subordinates are based, with multiple generals implicated. Wang Chuning, commander of the People's Armed Police, previously part of the Eastern Theater Command's armed police system, whose Beijing's Special Operations Unit is highly capable and could control key areas in a rebellion, compensating for the 82nd Group Army being under Zhang Youxia's control, and the 188th Brigade of the Marine Corps. The involvement of the 188th Brigade is particularly peculiar. Originally part of the 82nd Group Army, formerly including the 38th, 27th, and 63rd Armies, the brigade was reassigned to the Marine Corps in early 2024 and stationed in Xinzhou, Shaanxi, approximately 200 kilometers from Beijing. This tracked armored composite brigade, equipped with heavy main battle tanks, is highly mobile and forms a strategic triangle with Shijiazhuang and Zhangjiago, facilitating rapid movement toward Beijing. Remarkably, the conspiracy was exposed when Wang Xiaobin, during the 2 sessions, organized a gathering of the Shandong clique at the Anhui building, where excessive drinking led to one participant suffering a gastric hemorrhage. The plot involved using the 188th Brigade and the Armed Police Special Operations Unit to launch a surprise attack on Zhang Youxia. However, Zhang Youxia preemptively acted, arresting He Weidong on the last day of the 2 sessions, March 11th, indicating that the military had ironclad evidence. The subsequent large-scale purges are closely tied to this event. Regarding Yao Cheng's revelations, some may dismiss them, noting that he claimed during the 4th plenary session that the military proposed ousting Xi Jinping, yet no such event occurred. My perspective on this is as follows. Yao Cheng has a history of accurate revelations, such as being among the first to report Li Shangfu's investigation, suggesting he has credible channels. All revelations carry the risk of distortion, and no one can guarantee 100% accuracy. For example, Cai Xia, who has repeatedly shared military-related information, has also been inaccurate at times. Sources vary by circle and level, and most are partial with time-sensitive factors. For instance, my information about Xi Jinping's restricted movements primarily referred to the 4th plenary session period. For this reason, I repeatedly emphasize to everyone that no revelation should be treated as an absolute truth. They are merely references, especially from isolated sources. Why share Yao Cheng's revelations this time? Because Cai Xia's information comes from multiple channels, and Yao's information largely aligns with hers. In other words, the claim that He Weidong and the 9 generals were involved in a conspiracy to seize power through armed force is corroborated by at least 3 distinct sources. Moreover, as early as May this year, Mr. Wang Youchuan, former secretary to Wei Jianxing, former secretary of the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, publicly cited authoritative sources from the Epoch Times, stating that Xi Jinping had been losing power since April of last year. Despite several counterattacks by Xi, including the use of force, all ended in failure. Thus, at least 4 or more independent sources have indicated that Xi Jinping's military loyalists, led by He Weidong, attempted a significant move, seizing power through force, but suffered a crushing defeat. Combined with the Ministry of National Defense's charges of 2 violations and disloyalty, the credibility of this core information is quite high. This brings us back to a question we have repeatedly discussed. Whose power were he Weidong and others trying to seize? If it was Xi's, consider that he Weidong was exceptionally promoted 3 ranks of the 20th Party Congress. Miao Hua is a trusted confidant from Xi's 31st Army, and he Hongjun received a personal general promotion ceremony from Xi, an absolute mark of trust. Lin Xiangyang and others are also key members of Xi's Fujin faction from the 31st Army. Why would these senior generals, deeply trusted and heavily rewarded by Xi Jinping, suddenly conspire to overthrow him through an armed rebellion? Wang Xiaobin, newly promoted to lead the rocket force in 2023, had barely settled into his role before allegedly joining a military conspiracy against Xi. These individuals' wealth, power, and status all stem from Xi Jinping, and they lack the stature and deep-rooted influence of founding figures like Hu Weiyong, Lin Biao, or Peng Dehuai. Their swift and collective defeat itself indicates their shallow foundation. So, I see no logical reason for them to rebel against Xi. If this logic holds, the world would truly seem like a massive farce. Conversely, if we acknowledge a fundamental fact that has long been concealed, that Xi Jinping's military power has already been hollowed out and usurped, everything falls into place. He Weidong and others were evidently acting under Xi's directive to secretly form a private army, as Xi, having lost military control, sought to reclaim it by relying on trusted loyalists to covertly build a force and stage a counterattack, only to meet with disastrous failure. In the CCP system, the victor is always the Revolutionary Central Committee, while the defeated are invariably branded as treasonous counter-revolutionaries. The charges against He Weidong and others stem from this dynamic. In other words, Ms. Cai Xia's revelations reaffirm a fundamental truth about the current power structure within the CCP. Xi Jinping's military authority has shifted, and the purges of his loyalists have been orchestrated by his rival, Zhang Youxia. This also validates our interpretation of the 4th plenary session communique. Xi's military power has not grown stronger, but has been further hollowed out. Ms. Cai Xia's interpretation of why Zhang Shengmin was promoted to vice chairman of the Central Military Commission but not admitted to the Politburo differs from mine, but I find her perspective reasonable, given her insider knowledge of the system's rules. She suggests that Zhang Shengmin was rewarded for purging Xi's loyalists, a decision driven by Zhang Youxia, as she no longer holds sway over military affairs. However, she retains influence in the party and government systems, enabling him to block Zhang Shengmin's entry into the Politburo to limit his power. While our interpretations differ, the key conclusion aligns. Zhang Shengmin's exclusion from the Politburo signifies a further split between the party and military systems. Each side controls its own domain, maintaining a standoff, with the potential for future confrontations to determine a winner. In the CCP system, a tripartite separation of powers is impossible. Once military and party authority diverge or become antagonistic, significant events are inevitable. A Xi Jinping stripped of military power will inevitably reflect a significant reduction in his authority in both domestic and foreign policies, with his wolf warrior approach being curtailed. U.S.-China trade negotiations. Today, the 2-day U.S.-China negotiations in Malaysia concluded. The Wall Street Journal reported that senior negotiators from both sides sent positive signals, describing the talks as constructive discussions that pave the way for the upcoming Trump-Xi meeting this week. U.S. Trade Representative Greer stated in an interview today that, after 2 days of negotiations, both sides achieved some results, nearly ready for review by the leaders of both countries. He noted that the talks are progressing toward a productive Trump-Xi meeting. Chinese Commerce Ministry Vice Minister Li Chenggang, in a separate press conference, stated that both sides reached a preliminary consensus on possible solutions. The negotiations covered multiple issues, including export controls, extending the mutual tariff suspension period, cooperation in combating illegal fentanyl trade, agricultural product purchases, critical rare earth supplies for automotive and fighter jet manufacturing, the TikTok issue, and overall U.S.-China relations. Besant stated on ABC that the U.S. is prepared to cancel Trump's threatened 100% tariffs on China, provided Beijing agrees to delay its rare earth export restrictions. He noted that China would postpone its rare earth controls for 1 year to reassess. Details remain unclear, but on the critical issues of rare earths and tariffs alone, China's rare earth strategy has essentially fizzled out, returning to the status quo before Xi's aggressive moves. Further details on software sanctions, soybean purchases, fentanyl suppression, and whether Trump will cancel fentanyl tariffs would depend on subsequent disclosures. However, the fact that the 100% tariff threat offset China's rare earth card suggests that China has effectively conceded. Consider the following video. He Lifeng and Li Chenggang appeared relaxed and smiling, showing no trace of a wolf warrior demeanor, indicating a positive negotiation atmosphere. Yet, Besant's disclosure of China's clear setback did not seem to pressure He Lifeng or Li Chenggang. Will Xi Jinping escalate with another surprise move? It's possible, but we'll know soon when the Trump-Xi meeting outcomes emerge in a few days.